Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 334 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second of the podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd. With me tonight, she's the greatest hostess in the entire known universe and some of the unknown universe, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
You know, one of these days with these introductions, you are going to go too far. I mean, I don't mean like offend me, but like, you know, no one's gonna believe it. They're gonna call you on your BS.
So, I'm just gonna. So, a little spoiler: we're gonna be talking about David Hogg in this show. And one thing that I like to say about David Hogg is to know him is to hate him. He is a person that is just renowned for getting on people's bad side.
Okay, weird segue, but
Aaron,
right, we'll see how this
you
goes.
are the polar opposite of that. Anybody who thinks that I've gone too far has not met Aaron Paulette. You can charm the paint off walls, Aaron. I'm just saying.
Let's see. What did my therapist say about this?
Did your therapist say is Weer'd being in the room with us right now?
Thank you for saying that, Weer'd. Because I have this habit of, like, turning down compliments that are sincerely meant by people because, you know, low self-image and imposter syndrome. But it also kind of sucks because I've been on the end of it when you give someone a legitimate compliment and they say, that's not true. And so I'm trying to train myself to go, I can thank you for it even if I don't believe it.
And that's you can not thank me for it. You could say it's not true too. I'm scrappy. I'll fight you. I will, as you know from the weird audio fisks. I'm always willing to fight when I know when I know that I'm going to win. Sorry, Aaron. You can disagree with me as much as you want. You'll still be wrong.
So I don't have a whole lot to talk about, but one thing I do want to mention is that this past week, Florida had a cold snap. And in fact, one of the days, I want to say Thursday, it got cold enough that people were covering their plants in case it dipped down to freezing. And Weer'd, you were down in Florida on a vacation. Were you here when Florida had its second winter?
Not only was I there, that night was one of the nights we got a late pass to Disney, so I was out until 1 o'clock in the morning in that.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, what's cold for Floridians is not cold for Mainers. So, how was your family dressed and reacting to that?
We luckily looked ahead in the in the weather, and so my wife is extremely sensitive to cold. She does not do great with it. She needs to dress appropriately, and so
she's living in the wrong place.
So well, honestly speaking, it's transition. So like actually when she's down in Florida, like when it's hot out, she actually has problems too, because she'll be outside in the heat and then come into the air conditioning, and that temperature shock also will bother her. And she's got Raynaud's syndrome, which means that like her fingers turn blue and stuff like that. So because this is a clinical thing, like, oh no, she brought warm clothes. She brought gloves and mittens and was wearing mittens in Disney World. And
I mean, that's great for her, but how about you and your daughter?
I had a coat I had several coats with me because of course I had the coat that I wore down on the plane, and then I brought a rain jacket, which was actually enough for me. I was a little chilly, but I'm fairly resistant to cold. I was chilly, and there was part of me that wanted to complain, but I also realized what was going on up here, and I was thankful for what I had. And my daughter is absolutely insane. Like, she was laying in a snowbank in just a t-shirt and pair of pants today. So yeah, she
definitely your daughter.
She not only does the cold not bother her, but it gives her strength.
So yeah, this is one of the reasons why I encourage people not from Florida, and especially in the north, to come down this time of year, because you don't have the bugs, you don't have all the crowds, you don't have the crippling heat, and even if it does get cold, you're acclimatized to it. It'll be okay.
Yeah. So it was one of those. It was a bit of a tease because it was in the 80s when we first got there. Like we checked it. We checked into our hotel room, and like my daughter instantly wanted to go swimming in the pool, and I was just tired and grumbly from traveling all day. So I just went with her. She swam in the pool, and I just sat in a lawn chair and just enjoyed the heat and humidity, and all that. And then it got cold. And so it was one of those like, oh, it was nice. it would have been a lot better if we went from, the 20s down to the 50s and be like, oh, this is considerably more comfortable. But we had that one day where it was just nice and balmy and tropical, and it was like, and they took it away from us. But we came prepared. We were ready to be bundled up and all that. So everybody actually did pretty well. The worst damage was just the standard Disney thing of it's like going to the NRA annual meeting. It's one of those, you're walking 10 miles a day. And so unless you are a freak like me who walks 10 miles without thinking about it, people would get really tired towards the end of the day. So, but that was it. And we had a great time. Disney still could bring the magic. Every time we go, they've changed the system around a little bit, so it's not quite the same how the lines work and all that. And still, at no point in time did we wait in excessive amounts of lines, and we had a good time. And we did a couple of the after hours events, which is the friggin' best. I highly recommend that to anybody. If you can get a chance to go to Disney in the after hours, like the parks are kind of partially shut down, but like all the major rides are going, and there's so few people in the parks that essentially there's no lines for anything. And then like there's like snack carts that they just open up, and it's just you've paid for it. So unlimited popcorn, soda, and ice cream.
Nice.
Was nice, but ice cream when it's 50 degrees out. I mean, I'm from New England, and New Englanders are well known for eating our ice cream in the dead of winter. But either way, it was still a good time.
So why didn't you tell me that you wanted to see me and introduce me to your family when you were literally in my neck of the woods?
Because we were slammed constantly and just like planning to milk all of it, and you knew I was coming. You didn't say anything either, so I just assumed that was the best part. But like,
Hi, I'm an introvert.
I know.
I wait for an invitation.
Yes, I know. That was extra planning, and there's a lot of planning going on within the Disney thing. It's not an affront to you. It's just we run such vacations as a business.
So, Weer'd, does your schedule make my butt look big?
Like bring all the boys to the yard?
No. I was making the joke about how that's the question you can't ever answer honestly, and men hide from it. And I was talking about your schedule, which was slammed, and it was funny in my head.
I wanted my daughter was listening to the Khalees song Milkshake on loop today, so that's my response. But the real fun came for we talk about needing to have a vacation from our vacation. I need to have a vacation from coming back from my vacation. We
oh yeah, when you try to get caught up on all the stuff you missed.
Well, it was particularly rodeo. Is we got home. We got home on Friday, which was one of those. The plan was, you come home on Friday, and that way we've got a little bit of time at home to unwind and get stuff done and all of that. And the on the last day we had laundry in our room, and so my wife did like a bunch of the laundry, so it's all clean clothes that are packed, so we don't have like bags filled with dirty laundry. So yeah, it's awesome. This is really, really good. And we get home, and we left on Saturday, and Saturday evening into Sunday we got a massive snowstorm. And so my driveway had snow in it for about 5 days, and there'd been several freeze-thaw cycles. So it turned into a glacier, and so we couldn't actually get into the driveway when we got home, and there was no easy way to remove it. I ended up pulling out my my mattock that I use for digging in root-filled soil, and that was my the mattock and the shovel. I would chip the ice and then shovel it, and I did that for like 2 hours when we got home, and before I was completely demoralized. And then the next day my daughter came out and helped me, and then I got to imagine it's because the weather suddenly was warming up, because it was really cold when we got back, but like it affected us all differently. But like I had like a headache for the better part of the day, and my daughter was in really, really rough shape, but she kind of turned around by about noon, and my wife is still not feeling quite right. It's not that she's sick. It's just like she's just feeling off and wonky. And I gotta imagine it's just like sinus pressure and just unpleasantness. Like, so it was a rodeo weekend.
I'd like to apologize to our listeners for that extended discussion on weather. I'm sure you found it just absolutely thrilling and didn't at all fast forward through it. It's okay.
that skip ahead 30 seconds button is a wonder, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's going to be more than 30 seconds. Press.
So concludes our old people talk about the weather.
Oh, yeah. There's something in the blooper reel about how all of our music now is in supermarkets and elevators.
I mean, the thing that bothers me is, I don't know, I haven't really done the math to figure it out, but it's one of those, like, I don't know, I felt like when I was a kid, like the oldies stations was playing like music from like the late 50s and early 60s, and it's one of those, like, when you hear like Nirvana on the oldies station or like Spin Doctors, like it's not even like, okay, I could get like some like early Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson and things like that. Okay, the 80s were a while ago. I could get that. We're talking about the 90s. The 90s were, oh yeah. It's one of those, like, didn't it just turn 2000? Didn't that just happen? Weren't we all worried about the clocks not working?
Oh, Y2K bug.
Yes. All right. Well, shall we dive into the topics?
I mean, I don't know why we should start.
Thanks to each and every one of our listeners. Well, Aaron, I want you to talk about this news story first.
All right. So for those of you who follow me on social media, you already know what's going on. And we're going to talk about how Operation Blazing Sword has joined the filing of an AC brief, along with a whole bunch of other people. But I want to do a special shout out to the California Rifle and Pistol Association. I believe they're the ones who are spearheading this. And also the law firm of Michael and Associates, who you may know as the employer of, well, my favorite Twitter crap poster, Costas Morris. And he didn't write this. Well, actually, I should say his name isn't on it, but no, actually, no, let me correct myself again. He did help write it, but he's like in the second place. You know, it was written by Anna Barvier and Costas Morris. Anyway, yeah, enough twaddle. So there's an AC brief in Antonyuk v. James, and it's a petition for Certiorari. I've butchered that. And what that is, for people who don't know, is that the Supreme Court, unlike every other court in America, gets to decide which cases it hears and which ones it doesn't. And so when they decide that they're going to hear a case, they grant cert for it. And so we're filing a brief with a whole bunch of other Second Amendment groups saying, hey, SCOTUS, you really need to grant cert to this. And like all of the other briefs filed by Michael and Associates, it's powerful. If I started reading the things that I really like, we would be here a while. But so here's a paragraph. Yeah, our AC brief recounts the massive resistance to Bruin that has arisen, and I have said, because SCOTUS Judge Alito quoted the Pink Pistols in his concurrence brief, I feel like I got a stake in this, and I'm going to make sure everyone who's fighting Bruin gets smacked down. And so, the brief basically says, places that serve alcohol, which is one of New York's sensitive places laws, are used as a case study to show how the Second Circuit botched the Bruin analysis in at least 4 different ways. And they argue that the Second Circuit's reasoning is flawed because it ignores the reality that everyone who carries in modern-day New York is extensively vetted before getting a permit, but before 1900, open carry was generally allowed. And it's like that, and it's really good. But I just want to stress that this isn't the main AC brief. We've got to get it in front of SCOTUS, and then we file the other one, which is, okay, SCOTUS, now you need to rule in favor of the plaintiff, not the defendant. So it's step 1 of a lengthy process. Actually, it isn't even step 1, because we had to file to get here in the first place. And so we're really hopeful that SCOTUS is going to grant cert to Antonyuk, or there's something going on called Wolford v. Lopez, which is about Hawaii and a very similar law. And so the SCOTUS may bundle them together. So
yeah,
I'm not really doing a good job here, Weer'd. Please save me from drowning.
It's great. I'm glad that you guys are on it. I'm glad that it's getting the attention, because this is one of those, like, I was actually thinking about this as I was going about the day on what I was going to say about it, and really the thing that popped into my head was that this is really a kind of a lot of the gun control that we have is really kind of old stuff. I talk about like hearing Nirvana in the grocery store, and this is really Nirvana age stuff. Is a lot of it's like assault weapons bans and things like that. This is all stuff from the 90s, and sometimes it's stuff from like the 60s. And in this case, this is really kind of something new in the fact that we've got, back in the 90s, essentially you had, there were places that banned concealed carry. There were places that allowed concealed carry, and you just needed to essentially pass a background check, and you could and you could carry. But a lot of those places where you could just pass a background check, there was a lot of restrictions on where you could carry. And then there are places like here in Massachusetts where it's very difficult to get a permit, but once you get the permit, there's really no restrictions really anywhere on where you can carry, besides like some very, very rudimentary things, because you don't, for you to get that permit, you might be somebody. So you don't want the police hassling somebody over carrying a firearm, and, you're too close to a church. And so, but now this is really a like straight up public places, like, you just can't carry in Times Square is like, a great one. It's one of those, like, it's a major intersection, and it's a public place. And this is sensitive. And then of course there's also the commonplace of bars and things like that. Is this something a lot of places restrict carrying where they serve alcohol? how does that line up, especially with the NYSERPA test? So this is a really good one. I mean, obviously, but the one that I'm the most excited about is an assault weapons ban case because I live in Massachusetts and that's bad. But Massachusetts is also slowly ramping up on where you can carry. So this is something that's going to also affect me and everybody else. And this is one of those ones of if they get away with it, it's going to start creeping into various places. Like if there's really any sort of friendly ear to gun control, it'll probably start creeping up there too. So like it'll come to Colorado, it'll come to Vermont, and other places. So yeah, this is, I mean, it's gun control. All gun control is evil and terrible, but this is well worthy of attention.
Yeah, in a previous AC brief, I don't remember which, but I think it was the one before the Second Circuit, Costas Moros, and I'm almost positive this was him because it sounds like him, made a point about, it was essentially, you guys need to strike this down because these states are not listening to the courts. They are defying you, and the more the more you allow states to defy the courts, the more it dilutes your authority. So you need to stop this crap right now. Only he said it was so much more. It was the equivalent of him very politely suggesting that the court take these states behind the woodshed and spank them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he writes in front of SCOTUS. I think that there's going to be something specifically pandering to Judge Thomas, and I can't wait.
Yeah, especially since I suspect that sometime in the next 4 years we're going to see the retirement of Justice Thomas. I don't know if he's directly spoken about it, but I've heard from a lot of very credible sources that he's ready to be done. He's ready to move on to that final chapter of his life where he doesn't have to be working all the time. And God bless him. I understand that. I really love his Second Amendment rulings, and he's brought a lot to us. So it'll be sad to see him go, but hopefully he could possibly give some input on who might be nominated to replace him. But yeah, I would love to see, especially since he does get really, really ramped up when it comes to firearms law, to see him do like a nice swan song of a final decision, because especially, yeah, you're right. I mean, Oddball was just talking about this a little earlier before we started recording about the fact that like so many of the states have gotten worse since NYSERPA. And like, it's one of those, like and New York specifically has gotten worse and is not complying with the order, and just something's got to give here.
I'm trying to say something that doesn't sound like domestic violence. New York, why you make me gotta hit you?
Yeah. More like they just need a paddling. The beatings will continue until morale improves. The beatings will continue until the Second Amendment is observed.
I'm fine with that last one.
I think that may have to be the title of the show. Well, so speaking of a beating, we only need to touch easily on this because this is only tangentially related to the Second Amendment, but it's just going on an interesting angle, and I can kind of bend it around to make it go. But essentially, this is a story that is it's from the Western Journal. I'm not sure. It reads like it's a conservative leaning publication, but this person is doing a really good job at citing Democrats within it. So they're at least doing some honest cherry picking with it. But they are, and I've been witnessing this firsthand. There is a lot of people in the DNC that are already unhappy with David Hogg's role as vice chair in the Democrat National Committee, and namely the big thing that they're getting on is that David Hogg has his own political action committee. And he is using his position now to raise more money for this political action committee, and is getting. Let's see. I'm seeing the word $100,000. You know, at various levels of $175,000. I'm not seeing a time frame of how this money is being doled out.
Well, it does say that he got 20,000 in December.
Okay. Oh wow, that's quite a bit. And so yeah, and of course, this also being a personal PAC means that it is considerably easier for him to launder the money. All politicians, this is a nonpartisan statement, all politicians raid their election funds for personal use, and there's various tricks of doing that, of taking people out for business meetings and billing it, taking vacations and calling them junkets. And then of course there's also the hiring somebody that is in your direct orbit, and paying them gobs and gobs of money, to do something, and getting a kickback in one way or another. So there's that, but then there's also just the general, like, the Democrats aren't crazy. They are a party of campaign finance reform, and this is absolutely the stuff that they rally against. So there's again, as I said at the opening of the show, to know him is to hate him, and the Democrats are at least the several people quoted in this, and the several more that I have seen on the Twix haranguing him are having some serious buyer's remorse with him being elected to this position.
So I'm just going to cap this off by making this more relevant to the podcast, and I'm just going to quote a Twix that's embedded in the article. From someone I've never heard of, Tyler Austin Harper, but it really resonates because he's got like over 5,000 likes for this. And he says, "Nothing against David Hogg one way or the other, but I would humbly submit that an Ivy League educated nice hair guy who is most famous for being America's leading gun control advocate is probably not the person best equipped to help Dems win back working class men in swing states."
Mm-hmm.
And I have spoken to people, friends, who are both Second Amendment advocates and diehard Democrats. And I've said, "What do you think about this?" And they have said it's a terrible idea. So even Democrats, at least the pro-gun Democrats, think this is horrible.
Yep. And another way to tie this in is in our last show, we talked about how Doge has uncovered money being funneled into Everytown and its various permutations and all that. And it's one of those, like, Michael Bloomberg is a billionaire, but and I don't know what number of wealthiest man in the world he is, but it's in the double digits easily. And yet still he is demanding taxpayer money to help pay for his little vanity project, gun control groups. And this is the same idea, is that David Hogg is demanding that the DNC pay for his little vanity project as well. And it's showing a level of greed and selfishness, which I think ties very neatly into, as I said before, the evil of gun control laws, is the fact that, like, this is literally the easiest position to take, is to be pro Second Amendment, because, hey, guess what? You let people own the things that they want to own. They're fun to own and they're cool. Oh, and also they can defend themselves and it lowers crime. it's just win, 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 win for being pro Second Amendment. And meanwhile, you've got let's tell people they can't own things and have restrictions and put people in jail and cause that. Oh, and it's going to make things more dangerous. Sign me up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Second Amendment, specifically firearms, they are the only object that is specifically allowed within the Bill of Rights that has so many pre-crime bills attached to it. For example, we have laws regarding ruinous speech. Slander, libel, plagiarism, espionage. But the thing is, all of those, you have to prove that you have damaged someone before they can be applied to you. You have to show who has been hurt. It's always after the fact. It's not preventative unless you think of it in the case of, well, I don't want to go to jail for it, so I won't do it. But it's always, this person has abused the law and harmed others, therefore they are punished. But when it comes to firearms and the Second Amendment, we've got so many, it might happen, and we don't want it to possibly happen, so we will prevent it from occurring by infringing on rights. And I don't know why it is, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, it all boils down to the Civil Rights Act, when before that it was all just, no, we can't let those people have guns. And when suddenly it was no, you can't discriminate against people. Well, okay, then, we can't have those kind of guns, and you need extra permits and this, that's, and other things, and certain people of certain colors and religions and economic statuses may not be able to get a hold of those, but we're not discriminating against them. They absolutely could if they could, but they can't. So, oh well.
Actually, I thought you were going to go the route of, well, okay, we can't discriminate, so we won't let anyone have guns. That's not discriminatory.
Yeah, though, I mean, again, I mentioned before about the concealed carry restricted states were ones where, like in Massachusetts, you can carry in a bar. I think it's untested in court, but there are some legal scholars who will say, yeah, you can even have a drink, just don't get drunk. And all while carrying a gun and not going to, because guess what? You might be someone's nephew or the mayor's son or a politician or all of that, the type of people who can get gun permits. And so therefore you don't want the police harassing those people, because they'll say, do you know who I am? And speaking of someone who says, do you know who I am? I don't know if he does, but do you know who he is the, those of them following the news, Kash Patel has been nominated for the FBI director. I think,
and we knew that was going to happen. That's not a surprise.
That is not a surprise at all. That was, I mean, he was the I can't remember when if Trump announced it on the campaign trail or as soon as he was sworn in, but essentially it has been directly with President Trump's second term that Kash Patel was his nominee for FBI director, and he managed to get brought through and sworn in. The big surprise now is, and I guess this was done through a leaked document because it has not really been official, but everybody saw it, and I have heard through back channels of people who are more in the know that they have confirmed it with people on Capitol Hill that indeed this is not a rumor, this is fact, is that Kash Patel is also going to be nominated as or going to be appointed as the acting director of the ATF. And that meaning that, by acting director, meaning that he doesn't need to go through a confirmation hearing for that. He could just be the acting director, and there will need to be going through. And as we know, I believe, under Trump's first term, there was no director for the ATF. There was only an acting director. And actually, I don't think there was one from like George W. Bush through Biden. I don't think there was an active director. I might be a little bit off on that.
Well, so according to this article, NBC News, they say that Bock was the first permanent director of the ATF since 2015.
Okay, so there was one during the was that Trump's first term? No, whatever.
No, Trump was elected in 2016,
okay.
So that was the tail end of Obama.
Okay, yep. So that was he got fired by Trump, and then nobody new got appointed until Beeplesneets. Biden can't say his name, so I don't have to either.
I have mixed feelings about this.
I do as well.
Because it could be good, it could be bad. So, all right. Right now, it's likely not going to be a problem because Trump is at least saying all the good two-way things. But if the ATF is allowed to continue like this, see, the precedent has been set, and now other presidents can do this as well. And if we get a very anti-gun president, they can do the same thing. And, if you thought a weaponized ATF was bad, and, give it the resources now of the FBI and the reach, and it becomes so much worse. Brandon Herrera actually talked about that in one of his videos. I think it was the video where he said, we don't disband the ATF yet. If you haven't watched it, you should do so. It's great. So right now, it's not a terrible thing, but it's what could happen in the future. And if things are status quo, this could be really bad for us years down the line. On the other hand, speaking of Brandon Herrera, if they decide to take his advice and start using this to begin dismantling the ATF, well, then that's good. And I'm all for that. It's just we don't know. And it's really distressing how little we know about it, because we only started hearing about this on Saturday, and it's Monday now, and there's still nothing concrete that's going on. And I got a lot of strong feelings, and there's absolutely nothing to hang them on. And so we have to wait and see. And for someone who doesn't have a lot of patience, that's the worst thing to tell me. So, at this point, the only thing I can really hope for is that, as part of this appointment and, Trump saying that, trying to, here we go, halt existing policies designed to curtail the clear right of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms. And I ranted about the time signature on that. But maybe we can get the bump stock ban also rolled back. Those are my thoughts. I just have to wait and see. How do you feel, Weer'd?
So yeah, I also have mixed feelings. I will say on the good side is I have heard from several people who report to know Kash Patel personally, and have said that he is a friend of the Second Amendment, and so therefore he is a perfectly fine pick to head up the ATF, and so that's the good. And then there's some kind of medium stuff on the speculation on what this could mean. One theory that popped into my head is that is one thing we talked about. If you're going to disband the ATF, you can't just nuke it from orbit. You can't just say, executive order, ATF gone, because that's actually could hurt us quite badly, because there are things like the NFA, without repealing the NFA, which requires an act of Congress, which is considerably harder to do, especially given that it's, the law that regulates machine guns. And that's the one thing that seems to scare even pro-Second Amendment people, is that you need to have a body that regulates the NFA to keep it working, no matter how you do it. Even if you wanted to do an amnesty or some other fun stuff that the ATF director could do, is just, open it up. Hey, come register your machine guns, and people could just register the guns that they've got, and we could make essentially machine guns cheap again. But you can't do that unless you have a body that is going to be handling the tax stamps. If there's no ATF, there's no one to do it. So you could open the registry all you want, but if there's no one to actually manage the registry, that's bad. But in theory, one thing that could be done is it could be replaced. And so the ATF duties could be rolled into the FBI. So that was the first theory that I had, is that possibly this is a precursor to essentially the FBI director is being appointed as the head of the ATF, because essentially the ATF is going to become the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
I've got no other information besides the fact that I can squint and make it make sense. That's all I got there. Another thing that kind of that I'm a little bit another thing that it could just be done is that he's going to be the acting director, so it could just be getting him in there so that there's somebody at the helm of the ATF to help essentially roll back some of the Biden stuff. Trump's been doing executive orders, essentially undoing everything that Biden has done, just like when he was first brought in, undoing everything that Obama has done. And however you feel about either of those presidencies, if you're pro Second Amendment, the Biden Second Amendment approach has been pretty darn bad. And so, he could again roll back, bump stocks and pistol braces and the frames and receivers rules. And there's a few other odds and ends that are kind of hanging over us like a sword of Damocles. So it could be doing that until we can get a full-time director, nominated and gone through the all the appointment procedures, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that does give me some pause is that no matter how you feel about the FBI, Donald Trump feels very, very strongly about the FBI and wants a lot of things about it changed and reformed, which means that Kash Patel is going to be very busy as the FBI director, which makes me wonder how much time is he going to have to manage the ATF in what he's doing. Maybe he can, but it seems like that's an awful lot of work for one man.
Well, I just assumed that he was going to be the titular head. And I mean, it's not like the head of the FBI runs the FBI. He has people reporting to him. Mm-hmm. And I figured he would appoint someone, basically, okay, you're now the ATF chief, and you report to me like the different parts of the FBI do. And so while he would be the ultimate boss of, yes, no, and give some directions, he would leave the day-to-day running to whoever he appoints.
Yeah, but that's still a lot of people to report to and all of that. It still seems like it's a pretty big, it's still a pretty busy gig. So, again, this is all speculative. We will see what it all amounts to. And all that. So we shall see. My definite hope is that this is just a precursor to a precursor to an acting director who is hopefully somebody possibly in the industry one way or the other. That would make me amazingly happy. But until then, let's hope that he is as pro-gun as everybody's reporting. So overall, it's good, but I have pause.
So just I looked this up. According to Wikipedia, the divisions of the FBI are intelligence, counterterrorism, cyber, counterintelligence, national investigative division, international operations, social media, and advertising. And so it seems very easy from my completely no experience perspective here to just tuck ATF under, that heading and just make it another division that reports to the director.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
Yeah. All right, Weer'd. So this last topic, this is all you because it has to do with Maine.
Yes. Yep. And this is really just a so Maine. Governor Janet Mills has been in the news because she recently stood up to Donald Trump in a governor's dinner and all of that. I'm not going to comment on all that, but I'm just saying that she has been on the tip of everybody's tongue right now. And I will say right now that she was somebody who was getting a lot of praise from me because she was a Democrat and she was a left-wing Democrat, but she was showing what I like to flag wave about with the Assorted Calibers podcast, and the fact that you don't need to be a Republican or a conservative or a libertarian to be pro Second Amendment. It's a nonpartisan issue, and all that. And she was showing that she was standing up against a lot of gun control laws that were being pushed through until she wasn't, and she both spearheaded. It sounds like her office actually drafted some of these measures that were going through, and then they were passed, and then she signed them into law. And so Maine went from being one of the most pro-gun states in the union to essentially kind of a mid-range state. There's still a long way to go for it to be as bad as here in Massachusetts or California or New York, but it's still not a great thing to see.
Well, it's worth pointing out that all of these happened as a direct reaction to the Lewiston mass shooting, which doesn't excuse it, but it at least gives the listeners an indication of how and why it happened.
Yes, and of course, she did say that originally there was some knee-jerk laws that went through like within the first week after that, and she just said, no, let's hold back. But it turned out she was drafting other laws. And I will also further state that the Lewiston shooting was, again, just like Parkland, another just woeful failing of government, the same people who will enforce all of these gun control laws, in the fact that the shooter had some mental issues in, on, and around the before the shooting happened, and likely should have been on the prohibited person list and unable to buy guns. And the person was reported to Maine's yellow flag law, and the police showed up and knocked on his door. They suspected that he was home because his vehicle was there, but decided not to press it any further when he didn't answer, probably because he was being reported as someone who was armed and potentially dangerous, and that's scary. But more laws will definitely work. But one of these laws was a 72-hour waiting period. And that has been challenged. Again, I will note, I always beat the drum on the history of waiting periods. Is they were the first time they showed up was when the Brady bill was first passed, and that was done when everything was done by mail. You would fill out the 4473. It would get mailed, I believe, to West Virginia. Might have been to Quantico. I forget if the FBI, I think the FBI actually handled it. So it'd get mailed to Quantico. The FBI would conduct the background check, would either approve or disapprove, and then mail the 4473 with that approval or with the proceed or hold on it, or deny, and it would come back. And so it would take roughly one business week for that 4473 to make the round trip, depending on where you were in the country. And so because of that, you were required to wait for it to come back. And then when the instant check system went through, there was no more need for it. And so the waiting period was abolished. But a bunch of states were vindictive jerks, like California, and said, wait a second, gun control people are happy about this. We can't have them be happy. So we need to have waiting periods. And why are we doing that, since we don't need them anymore? Well, it's a cooling off period. It was simply just invented as an excuse to keep something that was no longer needed but was unpleasant. And so this was thrown in. Again, it does absolutely nothing. Maine has about, uses the same background check system as most of the country, not you in Florida, Aaron, but and all that. And so you pass the background check and you're good. This additional 72 hours does nothing but make it a pain in the butt in the fact that you will have to buy your gun and then go home and then come back 3 days later to actually take possession of your gun. And nothing happens in between there. It's not like there's anybody like scouring over and double checking or looking into it or seeing if there are any recent police reports in your name or interviewing people saying, oh, have they expressed interest in self-harm or harming others? No, it's just the go home and think about what you did and then come back later. We're not going to let you have it right now. So it's been struck down. Hopefully Maine will just say good enough because it is still a fairly pro-gun state. And hopefully Governor Mills has heard enough from Maine constituents saying, why the heck are you doing this to us? But we shall see.
So is Maine like Florida in that if you have a concealed carry permit, you can bypass the waiting period?
No. It's at least I don't think so. The waiting period's just for everybody. The Florida one I think is pretty unique actually. I don't know if there's any other state that does do what Florida does, where essentially you have I can't remember how many days the wait. How do you know how many days the waiting period is? Yeah.
No, I don't, because I got my carry permit before I bought my first gun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, like you should, Aaron. But yeah, the Florida does have a waiting period. It's 3 to 5 days. I forget what it is. I know my father-in-law had to go through it when he got his Glock. And so, cause he never had a Florida carry permit. But yeah, I think most places either have a waiting period or not. And the only other thing that know from states that have things where the carry permit gives you special privileges is places like North Carolina, where they have the pistol purchase permit, and your concealed carry permit is just your unlimited pistol purchase permit.
I thought North Carolina got rid of that law.
Maybe did they? No, I'm trying to remember, but I hope they did because it was awful. Yeah, they did. You are correct, Aaron. They got rid of that, but it was also the same year where they tried to get constitutional carry, and that got shot down. So, but that's the only other one I know about. I'm sure someone will email me once they hear this and let me know that there's some other state that I missed. But yeah, no, Maine has the waiting period. As a matter of fact, yeah, Ryan Machad from Handgun Radio bought a. Actually, he bought a gun. He bought a gun like 3 days before the law took effect, so he was able to take it home that day. But anything else that he buys from now on or not now because it's been suspended, but or there might be an injunction. I didn't read that far into how this takes effect, but essentially he was going to be affected by that, and he has a Maine carry permit. So no, the permit does not get you out of it. But yeah, this is good. And again, the waiting periods again are just vindictive and obnoxious. They don't do anything. There's nothing magical that's happening during this waiting period. And the concept of a cooling off period was just fabricated by people looking for an excuse to do something that they had no excuse in doing. And now it is time to get into our segments. And we often hear in the firearms world, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And so 2 is also none. But how many guns really is the minimum you should have?
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. In a recent discussion with my fellow firearms enthusiasts, I shocked one and all with how many guns I own. Or rather, how few I own. Now, I'm not one to publicize how many guns I have and all the details about them. Let's just say that as of this recording, they can all fit in one vehicle. And I currently lack anything truly exotic. I do want to share my thoughts on being one of many gun owners who don't have a whole lot. First off, it is my affirmative opinion that the minimum number of guns needed to enjoy Second Amendment protection is 0. Within this are 2 secondary items. Item A is one must be able to legally handle and fire a loaner gun, such as at a range, either formal or informal, to try it out and have some fun. Or to accept a loaner to help defend against a gang or mob, which has historically happened many a time in the Old West. Item B relates to something a former coworker once told me. He said he was all for the Second Amendment because he does not trust himself with a gun, and thus relies on others to defend him. I believe Aaron once said something pithy about herd immunity. Second, not everyone can afford to buy enough guns to fill up the back of a minivan after carefully deciding what small percentage of their collection to bring to the range. No, that's not a random example. Why do you ask? If a person is living paycheck to paycheck on minimum wage, it takes a while to scrimp and save for a used High Point, for example. If that is all you can afford, then I seriously congratulate you for reaching the point you can afford to exercise your right to keep and bear arms of your very own. Third, not everyone wants to collect every variant of a Mosin or whatever it is Weer'd has. I have a more tool-based approach to my collection. I wish to accomplish certain tasks a certain way, and so I get the gear for it. Or, at some point, I will save up for something nifty and shiny just because. The farm has quite a few ways to till the soil, each one with its own results and limitations. The shop has many different tools as well. I like to put it this way. Hit with a hammer, $1. Know where to hit with a hammer, $99. Know which hammer to hit it with, $900. Just as free speech ranges from reading a Twix to writing a multi-volume dissertation that is distributed far and wide, and no character limits on the words one can both read and speak, the freedom to keep and bear arms has no limits on the weapons one can borrow, buy, or use. Careless or criminal use of either can and should bring the wrath of bystanders and police upon yourself, and I'm good with that. It's up to schools and society to teach people care in the sending of either words or bullets. Have fun, be safe, I hope I gave you something to think about.
So, Xander was obviously referencing someone when he mentioned, combing through their copious collection and selecting which ones would fit into the minivan. Do we know who that person is, and are we allowed to out them?
I don't know if he's calling my Honda Pilot a minivan, but Xander is the type of person who might do that. That there were many people at the blog shoot who were, well, let's see, what should I bring in coordinating with other people? Are you bringing yours? So okay, there's always going to be one of those at the shoot, so I don't need to bring mine. I will say that when my wife and I left our apartment and moved into this house, I was very, very amazed and pleased that I was able to transport all of my firearms in one truckload and with the appropriate amount of locking cases and such that would comply with Massachusetts transport laws.
At the time,
yes. Yeah, I bought more cases since then too.
Okay. I mean, while we're on the subject, and this is not a brag because I don't own all the guns I want, but I have reached the point where I have to stop and not just think about it, but count them all in my head. I can't tell you how many I have until I start going, okay, that one, and then that one, and I've got to imagine them all.
I mean, I have to stop and think with how many Mosin and Cons do I own?
It's a problem I'd like to have.
I mean, David, I bought two more American M1891s, and I took a picture of all of my American-made M1891s. Oh, and my my White Army Tula M1891. All my non-communist Mosin Nagants. And David said, "How about you take a family picture of all the Mosin Nagants?" And I'm like, "That's too much logistics." That would be a cool picture to have. That doesn't sound like fun setting that up.
I'm pretty sure David has a spreadsheet.
He does.
For his guns, and I'm not sure how much of that is he's got so many, he needs a spreadsheet to remember them all, and how much of them is that's just David being David.
I think a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
Yeah. But finally, Xander referenced high points, and I know that it is vogue to crap upon high points, but the way I view them is that they are the modern day version of the Mosin Nagant, in that, you know, the Mosin Nagant for the longest time was just the cheapest rifle that you could get, and it wasn't aesthetically pretty, but it worked, dang it. And so, you know, high points are not aesthetically attractive, but they work. And I would rather have a high point than a lot of other guns out there. And they've got that lifetime warranty, so if anything breaks, you just ship it back and they'll replace it. Especially the carbines. I understand that there's some concern about the pistols with their big chunky slides and whatever metal they're made from, but I've shot their carbines, and those are really nice. And so if you need something for home defense, hey, they're very affordable.
Yeah, and honestly speaking, like, if you haven't shot one, like pass judgment all you want, but like pass judgment after shooting them. And no, they're not. You know, they're not going to compete with, a tuned, 1911. But man, I shot Oddball's 10 millimeter high point, and I was surprised at like actually how not bad it was. It wasn't spectacular. It's not a great gun, but boy, it also isn't terrible. Like I have a safe full of guns made by communists, and let me tell you, it's definitely better. It's definitely better than a lot of these Eastern Bloc guns that I own. So yeah, you don't knock them. And again, I absolutely love their affordability. There's a lot to love about that. Is that it is very much. I mean, currently. HK makes the VP9 for Vokes pistol, and designed as a inexpensive gun for the people. And that's it. It is definitely more of a Vokes pistol than the HK Vokes pistol. Oh yeah, and Xander makes a great point. I mean, we talk a lot about one is none and two is one and all of that, and really kind of saying you just need to buy more guns, and there's a point to that. I mean, I know a lot of people who have were not at all concerned about owning firearms, never really thought about it until they were in a situation where they absolutely needed a gun, and I'm sure there are some people who I don't get a chance to talk to on their thoughts on that because they were in a situation where they absolutely needed a gun and they didn't make their way out of it. So there's certainly something to be said about the time to have a gun is when you don't need one. We also talked about how when the Ukrainian military was pulling up to various towns and handing out AK-74s to anybody who would take one because the Russians were invading, and probably a lot of those people had never fired that weapon before, and when the Russians are shooting at you is not the time for you to learn how to shoot an AK-74. But that being said, The First Amendment protects the right to free speech, but it also protects that Miranda right of you have the right to remain silent. It's also the right not to speak. And the Second Amendment is the same way. You have the right to own guns, and you should have the right to own as many or as how many or whatever kind of guns that you own. We're working on that. But also if no guns is the right number of guns for you for whatever reason, that is also your right, and you shouldn't shame someone for choosing not to.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and that's been one of my arguments against people who are so obsessed with gun prohibition. And I say, look, I'm not trying to shove a gun into your hand. If you don't want it, don't take it. It's not for you, and that's fine. But by the same token, don't try to disarm me because it makes you uncomfortable, because that's not right for me.
Yes.
David is here to talk to us about Rimjam. Whoa, Black Betty, bam, lamb, whoa, Black Betty.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In previous episodes, I've talked about a variety of elements in regards to metallic cartridges and firearm function, as well as ammunition-related malfunctions. In this segment, I'd like to discuss a bit of firearms-related geekery that gets hashed back and forth every so often. The dreaded rim lock, also called Rimjam. This situation can occur when the rim of a lower cartridge hooks the front of the rim of the top cartridge in a magazine and prevents it from moving forward as part of the feeding action in a repeating firearm. Obviously, this can't really happen with true rimless cartridges like 45 ACP and 308 Winchester. However, any rimmed or semi-rimmed cartridge may potentially fall victim to this situation if enough things go wrong. Examples of semi-rimmed rounds include 25 ACP, 32 ACP, 38 Super, and 6.5 Japanese. Among the fully rimmed rounds are 22 Long Rifle, 22 Magnum, 8mm Lebel, and 7.62x54R. Obviously, this is in no way an exhaustive list. One of the cartridges and actions where Rimjam has been discussed in great detail is the .303 British round, chambered in the short magazine Lee-Enfield rifle. The .303 British cartridge has a rather pronounced rim. However, that rim, on a case made to proper specifications, is chamfered or beveled on the edges during manufacture so as to reduce the likelihood of a rim jam. The Lee-Enfield magazine system and action are also designed to ameliorate rim lock. First, as the cartridges are loaded into the magazine, they pivot down at the rear, moving the rim engagement surfaces away from each other. The second element occurs when the cartridges are inserted into the gun. As they're loaded, either singularly or from a charger, in addition to the rounds moving down at the base, they also shift back slightly as they enter the magazine, again separating the rim engagement surfaces. If any rim jam was to occur, these features would generally remedy it in short order. With some modern production ammunition, the rim bevel is not incorporated, leaving a relatively sharp corner at both front and back of the rim. Due to these flat bearing surfaces, these rounds are more susceptible to rim jam. However, with only moderate care, it can still be avoided. With properly designed and manufactured cases, even if everything else goes wrong, there should be enough power in a semi-automatic reciprocating action to overcome a rim jam. Manually operated firearms may require a bit of additional effort to cycle, though nothing too strenuous should be needed. For many years, the rim lock issue was a considerable bugaboo in making reliable 22 Rimfire detachable box magazines that could hold more than 10 or so rounds. Double-stacked 22 Rimfire magazines were, at that time, considered impossible. Eventually, enough lessons were learned from other firearms and experimentation that this challenge was overcome, to the point that several manufacturers now make quad-stack 22 Rimfire box magazines that function fairly well and almost never succumb to rim lock. Among the elements required for a functional box magazine to reliably feed rimmed cartridges are, as with the Lee-Enfield magazine, having the follower move down more at the rear than at the front, which reduces the likelihood of rim lock. Alternatively, designing the magazine so that the cartridge stack angles towards the rear as each round is inserted into the magazine. This helps make sure the lower rims are behind those on the cartridges above. Some rimmed cartridge magazines combine elements from both of these concepts. As with all box magazines, the geometry of the feed lips is extremely important. These details are even more essential when cycling rimmed or semi-rimmed ammunition. The feed lips need to be close enough together to retain the cartridge, but separate far enough for the rim to pass at the correct point in the cycle. With semi-automatic firearms, making sure there's enough energy to overcome not just normal drag, but the potentially greater resistance due to rimjam is also vital. We generally don't appreciate all the history, imagination, and effort required to design and manufacture not just the firearms we use on a regular basis, but the ammunition and magazines as well. Hopefully this segment will increase appreciation for the reliable guns, ammunition, and accessories we have available in the current era. We truly live in a golden age. Have fun and safe shooting.
Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range. Today, Lee-Enfields and why they don't systematically rimjam with chargers.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
That was really educational. I had not really understood all of those things, but and I've actually never had the misfortune of rimlock. Have you, Aaron?
No, I haven't, but I have had some problems getting the rounds to stack properly. I guess it started to rimlock, and I fixed it beforehand because I have the Keltec PMR 30, which fires 22 Magnum rounds, which are rim because they're Rimfire, and they are stacked in a 30-round magazine, and that takes some doing in order to get them to all work properly.
Yeah, I remember reading the somebody published the part of the manual that talks about how to load the magazine, and there's a lot of steps in there.
Mm-hmm. It's always slide it in. Yeah, don't do it from the top. Mm-mm.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's like, as someone I mentioned, I've got like a safe full of Mosin Nagants. So yeah, I've shot a whole bunch of rimmed cartridges, and yeah, they've never gotten stuck. I mean, I have gotten them stuck in the loading the chargers wrong, but actually just loading the magazine regular style, never had an issue with that. And David also just makes a great point about just the fact that like how far guns have come, because I mean, I remember hearing the old timers when I first started shooting talking about, their revolvers and the saying that I'll take 6 for sure rather than 7 or more, maybe, implying that, semi-autos, they jam. And really the only semi-autos that I've had issues with being unreliable is either because they are very, very trashy, like my Jennings. My Jennings is pretty unreliable, and I've got some Soviet guns that are a little finicky, or they're just really, really old guns, like older than me, in the fact that like old 1911s won't feed hollow points and that sort of stuff. But yeah, actually, the closest I've had to rim jam is I have, speaking of revolvers and reliability of revolvers, is I have jammed revolvers, and that sucks. Where if like they say, you're never supposed to do like the rapid plunge of the plunger when ejecting the cartridges, because yeah, if you partially extract the cartridges and then let the extractor come back and push it up and down a couple of times, you can have the rounds jiggle underneath the star, and then things get really interesting. So no fun.
So I don't know if I need to point this out to our listeners, but for those who were confused as to what the heck I was talking about, there is a song called Black Betty, and it was originally performed by a band called Rimjams. There you go.
It's a good song. If you haven't heard it, you definitely need to get it in there. So go on Spotify. And one last thing to point out is David talks about the tilting follower to prevent rim lock, and I just wanted to draw attention to this oddity. Ryan and I talked about it at Handgun Radio ages ago. The Smith & Wesson Model 52. It is essentially a Smith & Wesson. What is it? The 39? I don't have my decoder ring on right now, but essentially
you should say it like I know. Jeez.
Yeah, I know, but it's based off of the single stack 9mm Smith & Wesson gun from the 60s and maybe even 50s, and it's in 38 special, and it can only take wad cutters because a full size 38 special is far too long for the magazine, and because 38 special is a rimmed cartridge, it is it only holds 5 rounds in the magazine, which is hilarious because it's a full size pistol. So it's the size of a Smith & Wesson Model 10 that holds 6. And can chamber any 38 special rounds. It's just a really, really interesting gun that was just specifically designed for target shooting. But Aaron, do you know who aren't obscure unitaskers?
I mean, weird flex, but okay. Our listeners.
Our listeners! Thank you, each and every one of our listeners. But we have to give a very special thanks to our supporters on Patreon. To be on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Assorted podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus they get bonus content. We've got our blooper reels, we've got the ACB film tracks, and we've got the ACB mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So, Weer'd, what's that one kind of fruit you like to cook with?
The one kind of fruit?
Yeah, it's really exotic, and it's spiky.
Oh, rambutan.
Whoa, Black Betty. He's a rambutan, and let's just go with I'm a mammogram. Our Black Betty rhymes are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.